facilitator for the meeting, and I'm going to just do a couple quick things before turning it over to our co-chairs. I want to remind folks about accessibility for the meeting. So remember that for this meeting, we want to use the chat sparingly so that everybody can hear and sort of verbally hear from folks, because some people do not have the same access to the chat. So go ahead and raise your hand if you want to ask a question or make a statement, and we'll make the space to call on you and give you a chance to talk. Please introduce yourself or identify yourself every time you speak or ask a question, so folks who are only listening know who's speaking. And also remembering to describe things that are on the screen, and really just, you know, so that we can just, everybody can participate in the same way in the meeting. If you do type something in the chat, as you know, I will often bring it in to the meeting itself and share it with everyone. So also wanted to let people know we are recording this. We are streaming this meeting live on YouTube. Folks who are listening perhaps on YouTube, you aren't able to ask questions in this meeting, but if you do have questions, you can always send them into the project email, which is westseattlebridge@seattle.gov. So that's an opportunity if you have questions that come up for you. But we virtually welcome all of you who are listening on YouTube. With that, I think that's all for my part. And so I'm going to turn it over to one of our co-chairs, Mayor Nichols, to do the agenda.
Thank you, Angie. The agenda, I think, is pretty straightforward. There is a change from what we talked about at the end of the meeting last month. We said we'd try and get into the bridge replacement issue, which, while we hope is 40 years away, we want to be prepared. The agenda turned out to be busy enough already that we're going to put that off until our next meeting. We'll hear about all of the different elements that we have been covering over the last many months. Two things I want to cover, or three things actually. One, I want to acknowledge that Allie Thompson has moved and therefore has left the task force, and she's been representing Georgetown specifically, I think, or South Park.
South Park.
Right.
Was, yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So they're working to replace Allie, and hopefully we'll have a name, and the mayor's office will sign on and all of that. Next, I wanted to thank SDOT staff, Heather and her team, Sam and his team, for all of the work that's gone on at West Marginal Way and West Highland Parkway intersection. There were some weekends that were a little tough. I experienced that along with all of my good neighbors in Southwest King County here. But it's now either done or virtually done, and I think it has made a big difference, particularly inbound. There's now 2 lanes coming in from West Marginal Way northbound, and there's a free right turn arrow for people who are going south. I'm not sure what direction. They're going on Highland Park Way, and they can now get to West Marginal Way northbound, including the large trucks, because of the shifting that SDOT did. So thank you. I know that was a big concern in terms of the amount of effort that it took, but I think that if you ask the average person going through there, they'll say that it was worth it. So thank you. And then I want to welcome Chris Peeler. Chris, can you wave your hand there? He's a new member of the task force representing ILWU. They were represented very ably for a long time, but that member is now focusing on Georgetown, and John HRSAC is not representing ILWU any longer. Chris, I do want to ask you something. I want to specifically ask you if you would be willing to work with SSA and the port and of course SDOT on the issue of reopening Terminal 5. We're all excited about that. That's going to be great in terms of the Port of Seattle's ability to serve the region. But I have a concern, and that is that if you take a look at how much capacity we have on the low bridge, it really is limited. And it's really kind of a place where we're all sharing sacrifice. There are 198 West Seattle businesses that have access. There are 58 marine and industrial businesses that have access. There are 147 folks who are seeking life-saving treatment. There are on-call medical providers. And then there are 639 of your members who have passes to use that low-level bridge. So that strikes me as being something we could work on and make more efficient. As I understand it, and this is the question I've got for you, in addition to the request, is that most of those trips are from the hiring hall to Terminal 5. That's pretty much the need for that access. And if that's the case, then it seems to me that working with your partners to create a shuttle service would allow us to free up a lot of that capacity that are represented by the 639 passes, license plates. So am I correct in how I've described the need between Terminal 5 and ILWU hiring hall, or is it more complicated than that?
First of all, can you hear me? I want to make
Yes.
sure I did this right. Okay. Well, thank you for the welcome, and I appreciate the question.
Right in.
I appreciate the question on my first day. As far as the number, you're right. There's 600 and whatever license plates in the system, but that doesn't mean that 600 people are going back and forth on a daily basis.
No, I get that.
Yeah. Okay, but directly to your question, yes. The main goal is to get from the hiring hall over to Terminal 5 to go to work.
Okay.
And so I was at the first low bridge advisory committee. I don't know, it was a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And I'll say to you guys what I said then. ILWU is open to anything we can do to help get past this obstacle.
Great.
And so if it's a shuttle bus, let's talk about it.
Okay.
I'm not going to come at you guys here and say, no, we're the big bad ILWU. You know, we got to all do this together. And so I don't know where the cost is going to come from. I can tell you that the cost isn't going to come from the ILWU to pay for this shuttle, but by no means are we dead against the shuttle. You know, let's talk about it. We're more than welcome and open to having a discussion to make it so the entire community, you know, has access that they need to go back and forth on this bridge until we're all fixed.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. We're going to talk a little more about the low bridge a little bit later, about welcome, and thank you for jumping right in the deep end.
Yeah, no
all
problem.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
You betcha.
I'll be around. Let me know.
Good. Paulina?
Thank you, Greg. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all to our community task force members for joining us in our meeting number 23. You're all committed and we're very grateful for all your support and commitment in representing your communities. I also want to welcome Chris for sure, and even better with those great positive energy and news that possibility of when we have to get to work together. So Ali, I wanted to acknowledge, since she was working in South Park and here she was doing a wonderful work, and hopefully we would find a good person to represent our South Park neighborhood in the very near future. So my name is Paulina Lopez, and I am the Executive Director for the Duwamish River Cleanup Coalition, and I'm here in the Duwamish territories greeting you all. My apologies. So, I always like having a good time for community discussion input before a lot of things are thrown to us and information, which is very important. But let's take a moment and share how are things going, what have we heard from community, some of the issues that we would like to bring up. We're all aware school started, for example, and there has been a lot of different challenges there with kids walking to school, for example, in my neighborhood in South Park with the increased traffic and the fastest speed. So I being working to some people with SDOT and see what type of measures. We don't have, unfortunately, any school guards that would help the kids cross the street on Cloverdale. And as you all know, that is the main intersection that brings the traffic. So we're working on it to make a reality, and also hopefully we can get some of those signs going to protect our children. I would love to, I see, thank you, Deb. And please feel free to raise your hand or write it on the chat and to have this community discussion. Thank you. Go ahead, Deb.
Thank you. Deb Barker here, a community member in West Seattle. And Sarah, I think you're on the call because I know you were doing a test sound check earlier. And I just wanted to say thank you for sending the 16th Avenue Southwest update that you did. And I apologize, I wasn't able to read it because I was in a car at the time. I just would hope, are you going to be talking about the next steps for 16th Avenue issues at this meeting? Can you summarize this? And more importantly, since the college has not opened, I'm very nervous about not having any forward motion on this whole topic for a month. So looking forward to what you will be reporting either now or later.
Deb, I would love to address that now because it is not part of my presentation later. I can definitely include something about it in next month as well. But yes, so we have met with the 16th Avenue Southwest community, which is kind of in the northern part of 16th Avenue Southwest where the South Seattle College is. And we have a SDOT team working on, I should say the concerns were traffic speeding. And even though they're not technically designated as a detour route with our Delridge Rapid Ride improvements going on and the closure of the high bridge, they were experiencing a lot more traffic volume than typical. And our data showed that they had higher level speeds too. So we are going to take this 16th Avenue Southwest, the northern part, in a couple different steps. So we have made sure that there is the restriping to be done to make sure that we have the visual clues about where vehicles should be going if you're driving or riding your bike or parking your car on that stretch. Then we're also going to install some radar feedback signs to really get the education about what the posted speed limits are up there. Then we're going to go back and do additional speed studies to make sure those two interventions did or did not show any decrease of speeds. What Deb was talking about is we were going to do some pedestrian counts as well to see if there's any additional pedestrian improvements that we could make for crossing 16th Avenue Southwest. And we were planning on doing it when school is in session for South Seattle College. And now that we know that their in-person school may be delayed and pushed out a little bit, we want to work with the community to discuss when the best time to do those counts are. And then we were planning on hoping to meet with the community before the end of the year after we do those counts to see what kind of interventions and traffic calming solutions we can come up with as a team. So sorry that kind of a bigger report than maybe everyone wanted to know about, but we do have work going on in that area for sure.
Thank you, Sarah, for that response. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I saw Councilmember Hurlbut was raising her hand. Was that a response?
I raised my hand and then I put it back down because I put my comment in the chat. I think there's some emails that crossed. We got I haven't looked at it carefully, but looks like a pretty comprehensive update from Sarah today at 11:23 a.m.
Perfect timing.
Perfect. Okay, good. Thank you all. I don't see any other hands being brought up. So, but feel free to write it on the chat if you would like to. And then at this point, I'm going to invite Sam Zimbabwe to give a quick update on the water taxi.
Actually, Sam, before you go, can we?
Oh, we have Colleen.
That was
Yes.
just right at the end, Paulina.
Sorry.
You got it under the wire.
I keep forgetting how to raise my hand in this thing. So sorry. It's only been a year and a half. This is Colleen Desmond, and I'm from the Highland Park neighborhood. And so just since we were talking about 16th, I got an email from one of our neighbors who said that the Highland Park neighborhood has been working with the home zones about 16th Avenue, and that there was, and so maybe Sarah could address this, but that the fire department kind of nixed the plan for additional speed cushions on 16th because of it would slow down Medic 1. And so I think I guess my question is, what are the alternative plans since that, and that makes sense, total sense, but are there alternative plans for that area since they can't do those speed humps there?
This is Matt. This is Matt Beaulieu from Seattle Department of Transportation, Transportation Operations Division. Specifically, I want to say, yes, we had a dialogue with our partners at Seattle Fire Department. And as the agency that operates the roadway, we decided to pull those speed cushions back. So I do want to make sure that I'm acknowledging that we made that call because we do respect what we've heard from our partners in public safety. We're still working on 16th Avenue Southwest. As you know, arterial traffic calming is a really challenging element because we do need to make sure that our buses and our emergency vehicles and those can get through in an efficient and effective manner. But we also need to be conscious about the fact that my Impreza probably shouldn't. So unfortunately, I don't have a menu that we can come in front of you today and say, yes, we've got this, but we're still working on it. And I can commit to that. Okay, thanks. I didn't necessarily expect you to have like the layout of answers, but since we were talking about 16th, I thought I would just bring it up, and it does make sense. We don't want to impede the buses or the emergency vehicles, so we understand.
Colleen, we'll be at the HPAC meeting on the 22nd, so we'll talk more about that with community as well.
Awesome.
There.
Okay,
Great.
Yeah.
That would be a good update to have with the community. Thank you, Colleen. Co-Chair Nichols, did you have a community update? You're muted, my dear.
Thank you. Just based on the 16th Avenue conversation, for Sharon and I, when we leave West Seattle and we're coming back, we have used 16th Avenue as the alternative when West Marginal Way is backed up at the Highland Parkway intersection. Since the improvements and the second lane northbound was put in, we have not had to use 16. So my hope is, and I hope we can get some data maybe next month or the following month, is that 16th will see a bit of a decrease in the volume of people who are using it as an alternative. I would be curious if we can gather that kind of data and analyze it, along with making sure that the folks who are still using it are obeying the speed limit and other traffic regulations. Thank you.
Sarah and Matt can partner on that.
Yep, for sure.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, Angie, I don't see any other hands. So now let's welcome our director, Zimbabwe.
Hey folks, Sam Zimbabwe, Director of SDOT here. And we have as Mayor Nichols said earlier, we have a packed agenda. Before we get into some of the bridge updates, I just wanted to give an update from our last meeting. We talked a lot about water taxi. And since then, we have been working really closely with Metro to find a way to increase water taxi service through the winter. A lot of heavy lifting on both parts. And we're still working on some of the details of the agreement, but wanted to share that we have found a way to extend the summer sailing schedule through the winter. and fund that as we continue to make repairs to the high bridge, as we know that people are going to be moving around more and more, hopefully, and have that as an option for people. So we really appreciate the push last time, and it caused us to sharpen our pencils and really figure out with Metro how to make this work. Again, some details with those sharp pencils still to be figured out, but when the current schedule is set to end on October 15th, we found the resources to be able to extend that through the winter.
Excellent, good work.
Wonderful. Okay, so any questions about that, or yay team?
We'll have a
great.
much longer discussion of like all the other transit investments that are coming starting October 2nd with the change in service schedule and some of our additional investments through Seattle voter approved Seattle Transit Measure. But just wanted to give that quick update before we jump into the rest of the bridge updates, since it was such a big topic of discussion last time.
And it's been, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Deb.
This is Deb Barker. Through winter means March?
6 months.
Until the summer schedule would start again normally.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
This was a very high priority, so thank you very much for bringing up the great news and for the collaboration there. Governments working together.
Yeah,
Okay.
we actually do it all the time. But Chris Arkills and Councilmember McDermott and Shannon Braddock, I just want to lift those three individuals way up for the help that we got from you to make this happen. So thanks so much.
Good work.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Yep.
For
that's
those
right.
of you who can't access the chat, there's a number of comments in the chat about great news and really appreciating the effort to extend the service.
That's right. Angie, let's
Over
get
to
moving
you.
into the, sorry?
Yeah, no, we were saying the same thing. We're ready to go.
Okay.
It's over to Heather. This is your section.
Yes. Yes. Hi, team. How's everybody doing today? I have some bridge updates as usual. So if we move to the next slide, I can start giving them. What you see here is a picture of my boss, Sam Zimbabwe, gesturing to a large group of folk wearing orange vests on top of the West Seattle Bridge. He had the opportunity, I was on vacation, otherwise you bet I would be there, to brief Senator Cantwell, Deputy Secretary of USDOT, Polly Trottenberg, and the acting FHWA Administrator, Stephanie Pollock, up there on the bridge in August. That was a good day for us. So I think much of this may not come as too much of a surprise, but all in one place. We have secured $37.7 million worth of federal funding. The grant legislation that would allow us to accept those funds was passed by the City Council on September 13th. Thank you very much for your advocacy, Councilmember Herbold. We were also, the USDOT approved our use of a community workforce agreement to hire workers from disadvantaged zip codes. This was a central part of the project. We wanted to make sure that any benefit that we could funnel to communities who were most impacted, that we were able to do that. We have maintained schedule for project permits, which may not sound like a big deal to some of you, but it is a huge deal to keep this project on schedule. We also completed the 60% design and modified the scope of work, which I will discuss shortly. We also have initiated the 90% design review. We have the 90% package, and that is being circulated to make sure we haven't missed anything. We have also obtained approval from the state and federal government to begin early work in advance of the actual rehab. What this allows us to do is spend local money to do this work before we have a final construction contract. But all the money that we spend on this early work will be able to be counted as match for the federal funds. This is a big deal because it gives us a little bit of a head start. So construction of a sort is going to begin in October before we finish the actual, or before we start the actual rehabilitation work. So what we are going to do in October, among other things, is procure some materials such as expansion joints. I'll talk about that in a minute. We are also designing and constructing the work platforms off-site. You may remember last July, we lifted these work platforms. The picture shows an aerial view. Well, it's not really a view from underneath the bridge up to the work platforms, as well as a view of the work platforms from the work platform. We are going to core through portions of the bridge to install those platforms, and we're going to relocate the utilities inside the girders to make room for new post tensioning. So there are utility lines inside the girders that need to be moved so that we can make room for that work that is going to be necessary to reopen the bridge. Next slide, please. So I spoke a couple of slides ago about adjustments to the scope. You may recall lots and lots of talk about Pier 18 early on in the project, and that initially doing some ground improvements like stiffening the ground around the Pier 18 foundation was part of the project. We based that assumption on some pretty conservative assumptions, but after a full geotechnical review, we found that it's not required for us to do that ground improvement work for Pier 18, either to fix the bridge or to keep the bridge at a high level of seismic safety. If in the future we decide that we need to do that ground improvement, we can do it without removing traffic from the bridge. So it's work that we can do even while traffic is operating on the bridge. Next slide, please. So this is slightly too much inside baseball, but for some of you, this will be an important detail. Removing that scope from the design, that was a $12 million piece of work. In order so that we don't have to return any of the grant money that we have already accepted, we have added some major maintenance work to the scope. This is really good news because what it means is we're going to do regular maintenance work that we might have needed to do. Can you guys still hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My headphones just died. Too many meetings today.
So can you hear me again?
Yep.
Okay. So what
particularly replace a bunch of expansion joints?
Hold on just a second, Heather.
We're not hearing you now.
Okay, try again. Nope. No, now.
you cannot hear me?
Now we can.
Yay. Okay. We're going to replace a bunch of expansion joints and do some concrete overlay and some carbon fiber wrap on the ends of the bridge. What this does is allows us to do two things at once, some major maintenance while we're rehabbing the bridge, which means that work that normally would have disrupted traffic in the future will happen now when the bridge is closed. So this is actually quite good news for users of the bridge now and into the future. Next slide, please. So so everyone can keep a checklist as much as I do. In September, we are reviewing the 90% design package. In October, we're going to start early work and we're going to get the second estimate from based on the 90% design. We're also going to start our MAC negotiations. MAC stands for maximum allowable construction cost. In November, we will conclude those negotiations. We will have FHWA and WashDOT approve our contract to move forward with the rehab, and then construction will begin. So in November, we will be in construction. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, we were given approval by USDOT to use priority hire. This is a requirement that the contractor has to hire from local economically distressed communities. So this means that 5,800 construction workers who are living in economically distressed areas are among those workers prioritized for employment on this project. 9 of the 31 economically distressed areas prioritized by the West Seattle Bridge Program are in locations impacted by the closure. And workers could earn an estimated $600,000 to $900,000 in direct wages from work on this project, in addition to benefits. That's together, not individually. And just, you know, in case you were thinking you maybe wanted to go into a different line of work. Without priority hire, the same communities would earn just about half of that amount. And so we are thrilled about that. Councilmember Herbold.
Thanks a bunch. I just want to note on this, priority hire has been the city's policy for our major capital projects since 2015. I have been, you know, getting some emails from constituents who believe that our use of this program, that again has been city policy for many years now, is somehow creating a delay. And I just want to I want to express publicly here that that is not the case. The delay, there is no delay associated with the use of this program.
That's exactly right, Councilmember Herbold. We can do a couple of things at the same time. And so you noted that this has been the policy since 2015, and we do use it on locally funded projects, but we haven't been able to use it on federally funded projects. And so that's the difference here. We would have proceeded if we didn't get this approval, and it did not cost us any time. Thank you. That's important to bring up. Next slide, please. So you may recall, I think it was last month, we scanned some portions of the Spokane St Viaduct. That's the part of, you know, there's a whole big bridge structure from I-5 all the way to the intersection with Fauntleroy. And so this is the part that is from I-5 to where the interchange with 99 happens. They scanned it to understand the condition and performance as part of routine maintenance. And we did a sound scan, ground penetrating radar, and infrared imaging. We're analyzing those results and we'll get them back. That's one of those things that is not precisely related to this project, but it's a thing that's happening in the vicinity of this project. And we just wanted to make sure that everybody was abreast of that. Next slide, please. Okay. Any discussions or questions?
Deb Barker, you have your hand, you have your real hand up, not your virtual hand. So
thank you, Deb Barker here, because it takes too much to find the virtual hand. Just want to confirm that the scanning, the deck scan, do we know if that included the portion of Spokane Street that, sorry, Spokane Viaduct that is under WSDOT purview?
Probably not, but I do not know for certain. Do we have somebody from Roadway Structures on the call?
That's okay. I was just
we'll take a note of that.
I was concerned about. I thought, geez, if they're up there, do it, and then tell WSDOT that they need to make it.
It looks like Matt Bull, you might have something to say. Thanks, Matt.
Unfortunately, not a huge update. We are in conversation with WSDOT Structures folks about it, but we've not gotten a definitive answer or time yet. But that conversation is continuing.
Okay. Much appreciated, Matt. Thanks, Heather.
You're more than welcome.
And I will jump in and let you know that there has been some conversation going on in the chat. It's mostly around the park taxi. And actually everybody thanking everybody and giving credit to all who were a part of it. So that's some of the conversation in the chat. And noting that Mayor Nichols is the founder of the service while on King County Council. So everybody if you aren't able to see the chat, that's what's been going on over there.
Angie,
Any-
we should also note in chat, it has been referenced that Mayor Nichols loves his grandchildren.
Thank you.
And let
He's
me
fond
tell
of
you,
them. Fond of them. Maybe
let me
not.
tell you,
you know.
if you saw those grandkids, you would understand why. So they are adorable. I also wanted to mention, and it seems like maybe we should put this at the front and end of my every bridge update, because I've had some questions that feel strange to me recently. We are on schedule. So we are 100% on schedule. That when we believe we will be done with this bridge has not changed. It is still mid-2022. And so if you are hearing things from your friends or other members of the community, you can tell them we're on schedule. I'm nothing if not an oversharer, and I promise if there was something wrong, we would tell you right away. So just everybody, please take note. We are 100% on schedule as of this moment.
Any other questions? Yeah, Anne.
Heather, I saw the part where you're, sorry, this is Ann Higuera. I saw the part where you're purchasing some things ahead. Are those things that are long lead items, or are they things that you can just buy now because you have the money? And what about long lead items, and what about increases in material costs like steel in particular that have happened? I'm assuming you're taking that into account with the negotiations with the contractor.
100%, which is why we aren't giving you any details on estimates. So yes, it's long lead items, and it's also stuff that we can just buy now. But mostly long lead stuff. Are we taking into consideration global supply chain issues? Why, yes, we are. Because your home construction work and our bridge construction work uses a lot of the same materials, right? Ours is just bigger. And so we are thinking very deeply about that. And when you remember I told you about the first cost estimate that we got back from Kramer, that cost estimate isn't just a spreadsheet, it's an explication of like the whole project. So it's the scope, the schedule, the budget, because all of them impact one another. Longer scope means higher budget, right? So yes, we absolutely are. And that's one of the reasons why it's such good news that we can start our purchasing now instead of having to wait until November.
Great, thank you.
Okay. You're very welcome.
And let me also just jump in there too, just to say that, we're not talking about the details of cost estimate packages because we want to preserve the integrity of the negotiations. We have nothing that indicates that we are off
Correct.
from the programmatic costs that we've talked about previously with you here too. So we are watching those potential cost increases. We have a lot of construction work going on, and so we're able to look at where we've seen some of those cost increases in some places and be able to factor that into our estimates. But we're not closing the doors on that because we don't want to share it. We're just making sure that we keep the integrity of those negotiations.
And those are the sorts of questions that you are welcome to ask us. Do you have any indication that we are out of scope, schedule, or budget? No, we don't. It does keep me up at night, as it should, but we have no indication that anything is amiss. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
You are welcome.
Maureen from the Low Bridge side of things. Maureen is going to give us an update on the Low Bridge access. So I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, I'm Maureen Sheehan. I'm the Low Bridge Access Program Manager. Just to give everyone a refresher, this program started when the High Bridge closed and we needed to keep the Low Bridge open to emergency transit and freight vehicles. Next slide. So SDOT's goal is to keep the low bridge performing, so emergency transit and freight vehicles will have reliable access in and out of West Seattle. We expanded access to conditional users in June because Terminal 5's opening had been delayed until January of 2022. Conditional users, as a refresher, are those West Seattle restaurants and retail businesses, maritime and industrial businesses, and medical trips, so those traveling to and from life-saving medical treatment, and on-call medical providers. That conditional access was not expected to be long-term, and we were anticipating needing to revoke or significantly reduce access for those conditional users when Terminal 5 opened. But after the conditional users started using the bridge in June, we dug into the data and we worked with the port and the Northwest Seaport Alliance. And the good news is that we think that no one's access is going to be significantly affected when Terminal 5 opens in January of 2022. That is, if folks can make some suggested adjustments that we're going to talk about today. So starting January 1, one of the changes we're going to be making is government users are going to see a change to their access when they can only use the bridge for emergencies. We're going to be asking all current users to avoid using the bridge during the times of day when we anticipate increased freight traffic, specifically eastbound leaving West Seattle between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. We're working with the port and the Northwest Seaport Alliance to limit labor trips by time of day and shifting timing of labor and freight trips by time of day wherever possible. And we're working to target violations. About 10% of trips across the Low Bridge are unauthorized trips, and that's resulting in decreased corridor performance and impacts to emergency transit and freight vehicle access. We've put together a policy structure that is incremental, and it's going to allow us to increase restrictions as needed. And we'll do that. So please do your part now so we can just stick with this kind of first phase of what we're going to be proposing. The next slide. So just as a refresher, this is what we were projecting back in June when we shared that policy update and we started adding those conditional users. Notice that purple slice of the pie got really small on the right-hand side. That was what we were projecting for January of 2022 when Terminal 5 opened. Conditional access again was granted because Terminal 5's opening had been delayed until January of 2022, and we didn't expect access to be long-term. When we shared the policy update in April, we were expecting we'd have to eliminate all of that conditional access when the terminal opened, but we found ways to dramatically lessen that impact to current users. So conditional users have been really, really great. They've been really deliberate about their use of the Low Bridge. And combine that with the work we've done with the Seaport Alliance and the port and the city, we think we have a solution that no one will lose access initially. Next slide. So these are the traffic volumes we are expecting to see in January going westbound, including the additional truck and labor trips when Terminal 5 opens. This also is including all the trips people are taking today. So freight and labor will be arriving in the mornings, and we'll be paying special attention to those hours and continue to monitor and adjust if we need to. Next slide. So similarly, these are the traffic volumes we're expecting to see in January going eastbound, including that additional truck and labor trips arriving on T5 and including the trips people are taking today. We'll be paying special attention to those hours and asking for voluntary assistance before making any restrictions. Again, on average, about 10% of those violations are violations and 5% of those government trips that we're also going to be working to reduce. Next slide. So like I said, we have a lot of violations across the Low Bridge. Those are people who are crossing the bridge without pre-authorization. And we're going to be launching a campaign to reduce citations and encourage people to use the detour routes. And hopefully those unauthorized drivers will all listen. And also to help avoid those unintended citations, we've taken steps to add some new directional signage on both sides of the bridge leading up to it, hoping to folks who are confused won't be taking the Low Bridge unintentionally. And then we're also going to be improving access to transit. Next slide. So from now until when Terminal 5 opens in January 2022, we're just going to be sharing this information, the changes that are going to go into effect in January 1 of 2022. So starting January, all the users are going to be asked to avoid the bridge between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. That's that really challenging time that we're projecting. And then government vehicles can only use the bridge if there's an emergency. If we find that capacity on the Low Bridge exceeds what is allowed, we'll reduce the trip caps for businesses and we'll restrict access during those challenging times. We don't have a date for those changes since this is only in the event we can't get trips down during these hours by asking folks to avoid the bridge during from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Next slide. So if we find we need to further restrict access in order to keep the bridge performing, we're going to look at reducing the number of trips allowed and restricting by time of day. If you guys all remember, this summer we put out a survey to all of our conditional users, asking them for feedback on what their preferred kind of options are if we're going to have to reduce access to the low bridge. So I think what we're proposing is very much in line with what we heard from those conditional users in terms of they prefer to have fewer trips, and then followed by restricting by time of day. So our approach is intended to be incremental. We're starting with the voluntary request to avoid the bridge between 10 and 3 starting in January. And if we find that that's not enough, then we can move to restricting further restricting the number of trips, and then by time of day. Next slide. So in summary, this is what we're planning for January 2022. Hopefully this is a good story for everybody that we're not having to significantly reduce trips yet or restrict access. We're really asking you to work with us to help maintain the access that you already do have. So we're going to be able to preserve those medical and business trips initially with the ask that people avoid the bridge between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. going eastbound. And then we're going to be limiting Terminal 5 and labor traffic to available capacity depending on time of day. And we're going to be restricting all those non-emergency government trips between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. Adding those signs, the additional communication to avoid those unintentional citations. And then we're going to be clearly and consistently enforcing that current trip target. So businesses, if you are exceeding your trip target, you're going to hear from us. So please do your best to stay well under that. So that's where we're at with the policy. I think it's a good story. We've really worked hard on trying to maintain folks' access because I know we've heard that it means a lot to people. So there's some questions.
Yeah, and Deb, I know you put a couple of questions in the chat, so hopefully you can address those. I did want to acknowledge that Laura Radford made a comment thanking the Low Bridge group for the thoughtful discussion with the community, and that the Junction appreciates holding the small business user group to 10 round trips a month and not reducing those. So acknowledging that. I also want to remind folks to raise your hand so we can speak our questions and not put them in the chat. I know sometimes it's a placeholder during the discussion to remember what you want to ask. So Councilmember McDermott.
Thank you. First of all, I can't tell you how happy I am to hear this news. I knew that as we expanded access, particularly for people seeking life-saving medical treatments, that we may be reevaluating. And I knew the last added to the list wouldn't be first to go, but I was going to be concerned about how those decisions were made. It's great to learn that we don't have to make those decisions. I would ask that you might elaborate on who the government users are, because Representative Cody and I want to make sure that we're not suspect.
Yeah, we have government users that range from city vehicles up to federal government vehicles. I'm happy to follow up with you just to make sure that your all's departments and agencies are falling in line with what we need.
No, it was just an idea of who the government users were, that it's government employees for limited number authorized work purposes.
Yes.
Correct. And certainly there are county departments who use the Low Bridge. You're not the problem.
The county. I mean,
the county is not the problem.
I used the low level bridge last night. It was only because I was coming home from the M's game.
We'll have another conversation about that.
Deb.
I'm sorry that I keep asking questions, but I have 2 questions and a comment. And maybe Maureen, this is just something more that you could look at my questions and reply back. I was asking, I've heard from West Seattle doulas that they felt that they should have been included as on-call medical providers within the Low Bridge access provisions. And I'm looking to see who they can be directed to have that discussion, since they weren't, and they claimed that, well, babies can come at any time. So just wanted to throw that out. Also on the 10 a.m. restrictions, which I'm very excited to hear about, the loosening of the bridge, if you will. I just was curious if there's any impacts to the school bus. If they're saying stay off the low bridge, does that impact school buses? And I thought I'd throw that out. And lastly, then, I personally feel that by relaunching communication campaign to reduce violations is a waste of money, because I feel that, at least from what I read from comments, people who are using the low bridge and in direct violation, they are very well aware of it, and they don't really care that there's a fine.
So
that's my thought on that.
yeah, Deb, let me just lay a little data on you.
Okay.
I am confident, because I read the same comments that you do. Sorry, Greg, Greg always tells me not to read the comments.
I know.
Generally very good advice. But I think that what we have seen is that most violators, like half of the violators, never violate again. So that either means that it was like a gut-wrenching emergency that they just made the decision, this one time I'm going to do it. I can't recommend it. Or they were like, oh, shoot. And so half of the people might be, you're right, just, having no regard for the rest of the community, but at least half are probably doing it as some kind of a mistake. And so
targeting that other half then.
Yeah.
All right.
So our job, though,
Fair
is
enough.
we don't want to give tickets, right? Our job is to make sure that folks have all the information in every possible way so that they can make a good choice rather than
Fair enough.
bad choice.
Okay. Just looking for cost saving.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Deb, just to clarify your question, so West Seattle doulas, they're welcome. On our website, we have an application for on-call medical providers that they can fill out, as well as if they want to email lowbridgeaccess@seattle.gov, we can get them that information. But more than likely, they're very eligible for access to the low bridge because they are on-call medical
That would be
providers.
great. And if, Maureen, if you wouldn't mind putting that in the chat, and then I'll copy it over and pass that on to the people
Sure.
who have reached out to me. Thank you so much. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
and then that 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Voluntary ask that we're making of conditional users is to avoid using that low bridge. Those school buses, those are part of our foundational user group, that's transit, that we want to see using the low bridge, and we want them to have reliable access to the low bridge, so they won't be impacted.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you.
And then just as a reminder, if it's after 9 p.m., anyone can use the low bridge. So if you're coming home for the Mariners game, that is access that's available to you.
Mayor Nichols.
Thank you. I wanted to, I guess, make a couple of points. One, the access for life-saving treatment is incredibly important. When we were talking about this last April and May, I had no idea that in June, Sharon would be diagnosed with a recurrence of cancer that would require that. But we have had access for 28 radiation sessions and 3 chemo sessions so far. And we have another 3 months to go. So she doesn't feel good coming back from those. And having to sit in that traffic would be really very difficult. And heading toward it, she's nervous. So having the ability to get there in a relatively efficient manner is important. So I wanted to acknowledge Councilmember McDermott's pushing us on that issue back in April and May, so that SDOT, you guys worked hard to find a way to make that happen, and it makes a huge difference. And if we were to get to a point where that had to be cut off, because we now, having been making that trip and sitting in the coffee shop at Kaiser, we know of a number of other people who are in a similar situation, and it just would be unfortunate, very unfortunate. And so, Maureen, I would ask you, in addition to the items that you pointed out, like limiting labor access during certain hours, I think that idea of a shuttle, we don't want to stop Terminal 5. We don't want to slow down the movement of goods and services and the creation of that economic opportunity for people to work. But a shuttle or some other way of moving people between the hiring hall and Terminal 5, I think, should be added to the menu, along with the limitations that you're talking about. So that's why I brought it up earlier with Chris, and I hope that SSA and the port will really try and find a way to make that work, in case come January and it opens, we see an overflow situation that we can't live with. So thank you.
Thanks for that.
Councilmember Herbold.
Thanks. Just another echoing of appreciation for everybody who has been working with folks who do have access to the lower bridge, and encouraging them to think ahead in ways that they can limit the number of trips. We would not be in the place that we're at now, where it is not a foregone conclusion that we're going to have to take away trips. Like, I think I've been telling people to prepare for months now. And, you know, I've just call out to, I know, Laura, you've been doing a lot of work with members of the business community to ask folks to consider ways to consolidate their trips, focus trips on particular times of the day. I know there have been folks working with all the user groups in a similar way, and it's really the reason why we're receiving this tentatively good news today. Or it is definitely good news. Tentatively, it will stick depending on whether or not we continue the practices.
Yeah.
Councilmember Herbold, could you also, you had a little bit of an exchange in the chat that maybe you could just share with everyone around the access.
I get a lot of questions about whether or not I have a special pass.
And your answer to that?
I'm sure other people who work for city and county get those questions too. It was just me trying to be very clear in a public way that we do not have any access to any special passes.
Great, thank you. Just wanted to make sure that came out in the words instead of just, okay. Commissioner Steinberg. Oh, you're on mute.
Yep, there we go. Got it. Thanks. Always takes a little delay to get unmuted. Thanks very much, everyone. SDOT and elected leaders, community members. I'd like to offer a few comments regarding specific to access issues and congestion relief. First of all, you know, it's a remarkably evolving science of perfecting the most efficient use of of the lower bridge access. It's becoming more refined all the time, it seems like, and we're recognizing critical needs as Mayor Nichols has pointed out in his personal story there. But we at the Port, and I should say Seaport Alliance, will work in every way possible to offer support, help decongest Spokane Street, working with our partners, SSA, Local 19 ILWU. I think the shuttle, I don't know who came up with that, but it's a brilliant idea. We've been using it for years at SeaTac Airport for between the offsite employee parking that supports thousands of employees daily to the airport. And you know, it's necessary to keep the congestion off of the access road, and it works. So I think that's definitely one of merit that needs to be explored further. The question, and I'm pleased to hear Chris Peeler's comments, the new representative here from ILW Local 19, that they're very open to that potential service between the Union Hall and the terminals, and that it's a matter of how it gets paid for and how much will it cost. So I think we ought to start putting pencil to paper and figuring out, some of those, the financial aspects and the schedule and that kind of thing. And then maybe open a discussion, a robust discussion about making it work as soon as possible. I, for one, prefer to take the water taxi whenever possible for my trips to West Seattle. It's a lot more enjoyable and scenic than the alternative detour route, and faster. I will say that. I'll be taking it tomorrow as I go to the West Seattle Chamber luncheon at Jack Block Park. You're all invited, can register for that. I'll be delivering a State of the Port early address before our fall typical annual State of the Port. So you'll be getting a firsthand on that from me tomorrow. Hope you can come. Couple more points. We do appreciate that we have kept freight access as a top priority for the lower bridge access. And nothing has changed in terms of the importance of that. In fact, you've noticed the congestion backup in the harbor. Ships are coming and backing up, and we can't even stop them from coming. They just keep coming up and down the West Coast. There is a surge in demand, of consumer demand, partly due to pent-up demand and a fall off in manufacturing and shipping last year. So that's what we're seeing is unprecedented backups. That means we really need that pipeline of longshore workers to and from the docks. And we're looking to increase hours there and after hours, hoot owl, whatever we can do. Of course, there's cost implications to all of that. But believe me, this is a critical time right now. I am glad to see personally that SDOT has figured out a way to increase the number of conditional users and able to maintain access to the bridge as we go into next year. There are many critical maritime operations, as you know, and other businesses that surely need to maintain that access as well. So good to see that as a solution-oriented refinement in terms of the science of access here. Just to close, we are deeply committed to continuing to work closely with SDOT and our partners at SSA Marine and our longshore workers, ILW Local 19, to remain within the capacity of the bridge and encourage alternative routes whenever possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anne, comments or questions from you?
Hi, yeah, Anne Higuera. Maureen, I have a question for you about government trips. I didn't really see clear numbers in the pie charts or the other stats. Early in the pandemic, I noticed, and after the bridge had shut down, I noticed that there was, I think, an SDCI car that was being staged in one of the parking lots at Lincoln Park. I was assuming that it was being staged for somebody who worked in West Seattle so that they wouldn't be going downtown to pick up the car and then coming back to West Seattle to do their rounds. Have you talked with any of the city or even state governments about trying to stage fleet vehicles in West Seattle to avoid those trips over the not just over the low bridge, but over all of the surface streets?
We haven't gotten so much involved in how departments and their businesses or how they're operating. I have regular discussions with all of the fleet managers as to right now the restriction is urgent and unplanned. And what does that mean? And encouraging them to have frequent discussions with their staff as well and trying to get trips down as much as possible. I think moving to this unless it's an emergency, they can't access the low bridge. We're going to be doing a big conversation with all of these fleet managers again and staff to help define what that means so that we can get those trips down. But I think how they go about staging their vehicles, we haven't gotten involved in, but imploring them that if we can't get trips down, then access is going to go away. And we don't want to see that happen.
I'm thinking in part about the low bridge, but also just general traffic. I don't have a good sense of how many of the trips are government versus non-governmental, but if there was a place to stage fleet vehicles and employees could come over on transit to come use those vehicles to drive around the peninsula, that could potentially have a big, it could have an impact on the congestion. So
it's a great idea. It's about 5% of trips are government vehicles, but I'm happy to share that with the fleet managers if here's another idea of how to keep your trips down.
yeah, you'd have to give them a place to park too, probably, not just give them the good idea. And I don't know where that would be, but it seems like that might work out for some agencies.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Liz, Dan, before we get to you, Liz, you put a comment or a question in the chat. And so I'm hoping maybe you'll just ask that one.
Sure, I think it was answered, but just wanted to make sure that the authorized 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. hours for crossing the lower bridge will not be impacted.
Those are not changing, you're correct.
Great, thanks. I'm just trying to make sure we bring it out. Put light on it for everybody. Okay, Dan, over to you.
Hi, thanks. I just I've been asking about a shuttle between the Union Hall and T5, sir, and I think Heather can back up since almost before this all went down. And now there sounds like there's a little bit of momentum going that direction. Can we just kind of hash out who needs to meet for that? Who's going to take charge of that, and who's going to meet to make this happen? Because I feel like we might just say that's a good idea here, but is this an SDOT facilitated thing? Is this a port facilitated thing? Is this a low bridge committee conversation that we need to bring some more people in on? But I'd like to see some more defined commitment on how we're going to get to have these discussions and figure out if it can happen or not. I want to know who wants to take a stab at answering that question.
Well, representing no one but my own experience, I would think that the partners in that would certainly be ILWU and their members buying into it, SSA as the operator of the terminal, and the port as the owner. And then the transportation agencies providing support and information and potentially resources, but mostly expertise on how you would make it work. So that's a conversation, and we're advisory to the mayor and SDOT. So we don't really. I'm not sure that our committee would be the place, but if the other parties saw our committee as the place they wanted to gather around, I think that would be fine. That'd be great.
Commissioner Stenberg, did you want to jump in on this? You're on mute.
There, I thought I partially addressed this already.
Yeah.
But I'll restate it, and I agree with Mayor Nichols and his identification of the parties that are most directly involved or affected here, and SSA, the port, and Longshore. I think that the port, and I say port, seaport, we're really in this together, can serve as in a facilitation role here for those direct discussions. And I think I will speak in advance of any consultation with staff on that. But it's always wise to talk with staff first before you make any promises. But I will definitely take that up with our leadership. I do think that SDOT has to be involved here. We can't have these discussions without SDOT's participation. I don't know that the port owns this. The problem was created by the problem of the bridge and remains so. And it's a ground transportation issue that has been directly affected by the bridge closure. And SDOT is managing ground transportation, et cetera, and all of the congestion management. So I would look to SDOT being a key leader in this as well. But I think we can certainly participate.
SDOT certainly has been part of all of these discussions and will continue to be as long as that is helpful.
Yeah, it's specific to the shuttle.
Yes, that too.
That's what I'm speaking to here, and to the questioner who raised the issue. So I think that's something we've got to take up soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, I just know this conversation's been going around for a little close to a year, and I'm just trying to see who's going to herd the cats together.
No,
to sit at the table.
you're right to ask the question, Dan, and to stick it to us. So.
All right, as long as someone's going to get everyone together,
Okay.
I just wanted to hear that commitment out of there.
Well,
so
our staff will follow up with SDOT initially on that. So
fantastic. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Any other questions on low bridge access? Comments? Things that have come up? Deb put a note in the chat around the queuing up of fleet vehicles and suggested perhaps parking at the Southwest Community Center, just as one idea. Probably things for discussion. Okay. Well, hearing no additional questions, I think we will shift gears a little bit and move on to Reconnect West Seattle with our returning champion, Sarah Zora.
Thank you, Angie. Hello, everyone. I'm just going to do a quick update for you, and then next month I'll be back to give a Q3 Reconnect West Seattle implementation plan report, since that will be now the month of October next month. My gosh. If you go to the next slide, Megan. You have already talked about this. Mayor Nichols, I think, led this discussion earlier on about the West Margin Way, Highland Park Way intersection improvements. As you all know, we are getting close to being finalized with those improvements. We do have maybe one more week of weekend work left. We have to do some different installations and some additional signal loops to be installed. You know, we're anticipating some rain this weekend, so we really hope that we're going to finalize the project this weekend, but some stuff may get shifted to next weekend depending on how the rain impacts the work that needs to be done. But we are really happy to hear that you all have been experiencing that the revised intersection in a good seamless way, as we have been trying to just do that work on early weekend mornings. So we're really happy that our crews and the design team, there was a bunch of people working on this and trying to make sure we did it quite fast. So I really want to thank all of our designers and crews that were there at 2 or 3 in the morning trying to get stuff done prior to everyone else waking up and using these detour routes. And I have good news about the Duwamish Longhouse interim signal as well. I think I told you last month that we were anticipating that work to start in August. We do have now our final permitting, final flagger assignment from BNSF. So we are starting the work for the interim signal this weekend on the 18th and 19th of September. So we do anticipate that will just be weekend work. There might not be a lot of traffic impacts this weekend, since we're just going to be starting out, but we will be adding into our Friday construction notice that you receive. The Duwamish Longhouse signal will be in there each week to let people know what the traffic controls are looking like for that weekend. So that's a really great thing. It will really improve access and safety improvements for those wanting to use the Duwamish Longhouse and Cultural Center and visit over there. So it's going to be great. If you go to the next slide, please. You all heard Stefan Winkler here last month from our Transmobility Division to really talk about what the travel options program, our Flip Your Trip program, is for West Seattle. Again, remember, this is really a way that we are trying to work with community, and we've been hearing you that it's hard to get across the Duwamish Waterway via single occupancy vehicles. So we now will be launching the flipyourtrip.org is live. You can all go to that website, sign up and pledge to be a part of the campaign to really try to change the way you travel around if you can and when you can. Even if it's just for one trip a week, it would really help the mobility in West Seattle and through South Park right now. So, you know, if you sign up for a Flip Your Trip reward, you're going to be a participant of the program. You'll be earning free trips so that you can get a free trip on transit or on a bike or e-scooter. through the Transit Go Rewards app. We also will have additional van pool subsidies and incentives built in. So you could have a first month free if you are looking to return to the office, maybe downtown or wherever you go. You can try to join a van pool to do so. And we will also have trip planning support. This is a really, the campaign, the Flip Your Trip campaign is a new partnership with King County Metro. So we're really excited about that. People will be able to go to the Transit Go ticket app and receive the free trips from there. So we will have an assignment for the community task force. We're going to launch this next week. It's looking like the Transit Go app, the rewards part. You go to flipyourtrip.org to sign up. And then you will get free trips and ways to try new things if you are willing and able to do so as you are trying to travel within West Seattle and South Park. It's a great partnership with King County Metro so that we can utilize their Transit Go ticket mobile app. And it's just a way to try to get people to recognize that there's sustainable ways to move around your community. If you go to the next slide, we'll give you a little snapshot of if you sign up on the flipyourtrip.org, you'll automatically get points. So as Stefan was saying last month, you can accumulate different ways. There's different ways to accumulate points, and those points then get you a free trip on transit, water taxi, bike, and scooters. So you're receiving an email from SDOT most likely next week to really help spread the word to your communities and your people that you have conversations with in West Seattle and South Park to make sure that people are signing up and utilizing the incentives program and the educational campaign that we have launched. And if you have questions about that, let me know.
What's the website?
The website is flipyourtrip.org. If you go to the previous, thank you, Megan, the previous slide, there you go. So please sign up.
Flipyourtrip.org.
Flipyourtrip.org. Yes.
You just put it in the chat for everyone if you.
Perfect, Angie. So we're really hoping people will try to change their trip if they can. Instead of driving across the Duwamish waterway in your car, you can try to do it in a different way. And this will really help promote that by providing points for you to do so. Okay, if you go to the next slide, I don't know if I'm introducing Nico, but I can introduce Nico. I can't say your last name right now, Nico, even though I've practiced it.
Martinucci.
I can do it if you want, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paulita.
Nico is on our Transmobility division. He leads our Seattle Transit measure, and he is here to share with you all the different ways that we're going to be adding some transit service with this October 2nd service change. So thank you, Nico, for joining us and putting a lot of work into the West Seattle community to try to ensure that we have good transit service and additional transit service than what is out there now. Take it away.
Thanks, Sarah. As Sarah mentioned, I'm Nico Martinucci. I'm the program manager for the Seattle Transit Measure. And if you go to the next slide, I can talk a little bit about what that is. Seattle Transit Measure was passed by voters back in November of last year. You may have heard it referred to as the Seattle Transportation Benefit District Proposition 1. We've done a little bit of rebranding since the passage back in November. It's a renewal of a similar measure passed in 2014. Raises about $45 million per year to support expanded transit service and access throughout Seattle. The renewed version of the measure includes a new spending category, which we are to address emerging mobility needs, such as a long-term closure of the West Seattle Bridge, which is one of those needs specifically called out in the enabling legislation. Through this category, we will be making some improvements in transit service beginning October 2nd, which is the Metro's fall 2021 service change. Primarily more frequent transit service on 4 key all-day West Seattle routes, namely the routes 50, 60, 120, and Rapid Ride C-Line. These are temporary service increases I want to highlight while the High Bridge is closed. We are planning on beginning to phase out these improvements in fall of next year and remove the remaining investments in spring of 2023. So giving us a pretty solid lead time after the High Bridge opens to help ramp down these services in a hopefully less impactful way. And I just want to highlight briefly that this category in the measure is also funding the fare subsidies and incentives that Sarah just mentioned in the previous section. So next slide, please. Before we get into the Seattle Transit measure improvements, I want to briefly highlight the kind of state of the network more broadly. These on this slide here is essentially every route that operates on the greater West Seattle Peninsula. The routes on the far left are operating with full service as of the October 2nd service change with some minor caveats, which I'll get into in just a second. The middle column are routes operating with partial service. Of note, in particular, are routes 22, 113, and 121, which are suspended today, but will be coming back with partial service as of October 2nd. And then the routes 37, 116 Express, 118 Express, and 119 Express will remain fully suspended after the October 2nd service change and will be folded into Metro's longer term restoration planning efforts. So revisiting the first column briefly, I mentioned there's some caveats here. The highlighted routes are those ones I mentioned on the previous slide that we are making some modest improvements to. And then those with an asterisk, we say here sort of pre-COVID. Pre-COVID is a lifetime ago, it seems like now. There's been many changes since then, including some reductions in service that had to happen in September of 2020 in the sort of moments prior to us knowing whether or not the Seattle Transit measure was going to be renewed. So the improvements we're making today are sort of in small part to backfill that and actually go a little bit above that as well. So next slide, please. So I'm going to go through these one by one, beginning with the Route 50. The map on the right, as I was looking through the slides, is modestly outdated. You can't really tell, but this shows it going across the West Seattle Bridge. And of course, the Route 50 now is operating on South Lander Street with the Lander Street Bridge now open. But our improvements will focus on the western half of the route. So the map here shows the western half of the Route 50 operating between Alki, Admiral, Alaska Junction, and the Soto Link Station. We will be adding enough trips to boost the Route 50, this portion of the Route 50, from 30-minute frequency all day to 15-minute frequency all day. So it's going from 2 trips per hour to 4 trips per hour all day on weekdays. This is a pretty major improvement in North Peninsula mobility. This will provide a frequent 2-seat ride from any Link light rail station, including the 3 new stations that will open in Northeast Seattle come October 2nd. A frequent 2-seat ride between any of those stations and sort of the 3 key commercial areas in the North Peninsula. Next slide, please. Next, we have routes 120 and the Rapid Ride C line, the sort of, as many of us know, probably the workhorse routes of the peninsula. Both these routes maintained relatively high ridership throughout the pandemic. We are fully expecting much of the ridership drops to come back as things reopen on whatever timeline that happens. So we want to sort of meet that with some more smoothed out frequencies. Right now, the 120 fee line dropped down to about 12 minutes, so about 5 trips per hour during the midday. So these improvements would bring that up to 10 minutes. And again, additional trip per hour in each direction. And in the evenings, some time periods drop down to as infrequent as 30 minutes. And so this would be adding enough trips to bring those up to 15 minutes, again, 4 trips per hour. I want to highlight briefly that these added trips align with the current low bridge restrictions. So we tried to focus our improvements on the times of day during which the low bridge is not available for general purpose traffic. Next slide, please. And then finally, the route, one less. Thank you. Finally, the Route 60, which for those unfamiliar provides service between First Hill, Georgetown, and South Park, as the map on the right shows. Weekdays, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. So sort of that all day time period, adding a trip per hour in each direction to bring the route from 15 minutes to 12 minutes, going from 4 trips per hour to 5 trips per hour. And then weekday evenings, again, increasing frequency from every 30 minutes to every 15 minutes. This is the only frequent route serving the South Park neighborhood and surrounding communities we felt it was very important to provide additional service serving South Peninsula in addition to the service in the North Peninsula area. And it stitches together a lot of the important medical services on First Hill with some of the smaller but still very important commercial areas in South Peninsula. Next slide, please.
I'm sorry, Nico, can you repeat since when these are getting into effect? The Route 60?
Oh, when these are occurring, when these improvements are occurring?
Yeah.
So these will all happen as a part of the October 2nd service change. So in
Gotcha.
17 days here. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I guess technically October 4th, because they are weekday improvements. So now that's the first Monday. But yes, it is a part of this upcoming service change. Next slide, please. Great, and then a little bit of an aside, but a fun sort of story to highlight. The Seattle Transit Measure, in addition to transit service improvements, funds various education and outreach opportunities. One of those is our senior reduced regional fare permit pilot program. It's a mouthful, but essentially the idea is to get seniors throughout Seattle signed up for our RFP, which provides a discounted ride for folks with chronic disabilities and folks over the age of 65. And as a part of that sign-up effort, we've done some field trips to get folks out and understanding how they can use their cards, what services they can use their cards on. And one of our more recent ones included trips for seniors in South Park and Lake City to take the bus to the Coleman Dock Coleman Dock and take the water taxi over to West Seattle and have lunch at Marination and Mackay. So it was a really great opportunity. They were very excited. Most of them did not know that they could use their regional reduced fare permit to access water taxi. It's just a fun little note to end on there. Next slide, and I think that's might be it. We can go into questions if there are any.
Yeah, questions for Nico. Marcy.
Hi, Marcy.
Hi, Nico. Just a big thank you. I am one of many, many users of the Route 50, and changing that frequency to 15 minutes is going to make just a huge difference. I've often had to time my light rail, decide whether to get off at Lander and try to take the 50 or to head downtown. 50 being a one-seat ride from the light rail. So I know a lot of people are going to really appreciate that frequency increase. I also know a number of people who live in the Westwood Village, South Park, Highland Park areas who take the 60 over to Beacon Hill and First Hill for work, for appointments, for some for school at Seattle Central. So again, just a big thank you for this increase. And maybe we'll get enough demand that it'll stay.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Marcy.
I just wanted to echo everything that Marcy said. Exactly.
Yeah. With your hand up.
Hey, Deb Barker here. Nika, really exciting news. I just wanted to confirm and just as a thought for your future presentations, the Route 60 has a Westwood Village to Georgetown to Beacon Hill to Broadway statement on Metro's website. So that's great. You may want to emphasize the Westwood Village since that is the hub and it connects to so many other things as well, but really exciting. I know of one person who's just going to be jumping for joy to learn about the 15-minute on Route 50. So in advance, I'll thank you for that person.
Sure. Thank you.
Any other comments from folks? Okay. Well, then, as it turns out, let's see, we're kind of wrapped up with most of what we wanted to present, and we unexpectedly ended about half an hour early. So we do have time if there's other things that are rattling around for you that you want to bring up before I turn it over to our co-chairs for next steps in a wrap up. So any last comments or things that anybody wants to share? Okay, well, hearing none, excuse me, I'm gonna turn it over to, I'm gonna turn it over to Mayor Nichols.
Thank you, Angie. Thanks everybody for participating today. I think we had a good, productive meeting. We got caught up on a few items and raised a few issues for further work. Next meeting will be Thursday, October 14th. That'll be our 24th meeting. We'll be meeting in the afternoon, early evening, 4 to 6 p.m. So we'll look forward to seeing you all. We'll focus on bridge repair, the final design and schedule, and the reconnecting West Seattle implementation plan. Also, I think we may touch on the bridge replacement because we didn't do it this time, but I'll confirm that later with my co-chair and with SDOT. So with that, Paulina, I'll turn it over to you.
I think you said it all. Just encouragement of if you have additional questions or suggestions or something was not clear, please reach out to us as we will be looking for the answers for you. So see you on October 14th. And thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for also the great news today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Be safe.